Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can tell by the graphics, I'm going to be doing another video on Four Against Darkness. So, Four Against Darkness is a solitaire dungeon dwelling, pen and paper RPG. Basically, the solo player is both the DM and the controller of the player character group. And it's called Four Against Darkness because you're playing four different characters and you put them on a pretty handy play sheet which has all four characters on one sheet. The reason why I'm coming back to doing a video so quickly with this game is the fact that, the last video I just talked about getting the game system and, reading through the book. And, I did not go into any kind of depth as far as, generating a group and how that system works, how the character classes, actually work. And then I didn't actually demonstrate uh, actual gameplay. So generating a random, dungeon, going through it, using the different tables on, the possibilities of that randomization. And so that's what I'm going to spend at least some time with during this video. Now, the last time I had shown you that I picked up the soft cover book. And I still highly recommend the soft cover book, but there were some things that I prefer to have on a PDF, and those things were enough for me to consider picking up the PDF as well. So now I have the soft cover, and still, the soft cover is a lot more convenient to use during gameplay, and the other sheets that you can print out, like the dungeon creation sheet or building tables. That's very useful to have on a separate sheet like this. Um, I also found that from the PDF you can print out the matrix, if you will, of the different types of rooms, all 66 types of rooms or corridors that can be produced through that random generator. And so it's nice to have that on a short slide, side sheet, as well as some of the other things like the play sheet and the monster kill sheet and some of the other things. But for the rest of it, the book is handy to have on the side as well. So I'm kind of using both. So combined cost of about $20 for a complete game system of both soft cover and the PDF is still, in my opinion, fairly worth the cost for the amount of gameplay that you're going to get out of this. So those are the resources that you need. And then all you also need along with the game is 2d6, different colors, obviously, or I'll explain why. Um, One is going to represent tens and the other is going to represent the ones. And there are certain rolls that you have to make that are from, it's called the D66. So you'll be rolling, and your tens and your ones will produce anywhere from an 11 to a 66 when you roll it, and that's for determining the room configuration, the next map piece that you have to lay out. So I'm going to jump right into the PDF, and that's another thing that I like about PDFs is that I can actually bring up the PDF on the screen and kind of walk you through that as I'm doing various mechanics of the game. So I will be switching views. I'm going to bring up my PDF and then switch over to a view so you can see that open screen. So there'll be a little bit of a transition. So here you have the PDF of Four Against Darkness. And nice little, you can fast forward to any of these table of contents areas in the game, or obviously you can just click through. And it starts off very, very basic. I mean, they do mention that, with future expansions, as far as the dice are concerned, really all you really need are D6, at least in this earliest version, which takes you from basically levels 1 to 3. But it's always good to have the other polyhedron dice handy. Excuse me. That time of the year. So obviously I have everything, ready for that. So the party. So the party is made up of 4 characters that you, the GM and solo player, are using. And there are warriors, clerics, rogues, wizards, barbarians, dwarves, halflings, or elves. And I decided I'm just going to go with the very, very classic and basic warrior, cleric, rogue, and wizard. So creating the party, it goes through, and each class obviously is going to have its different strengths and weaknesses. So a warrior's trait is that they get a +1 to all attack rolls based on their level. So a first level will get a +1, a third level will get a +3 just for their level. As far as armor is allowed, they use a shield, which will give them a +2 to their +1, I'm sorry, to their defensive value. And then either light armor or heavy armor, which gives a +1 and a +2 respectively. So, respectively. So so a first level fighter is going to have, and if they're wearing heavy armor, they would have a +1 for the shield, +2 for their heavy armor, and so it'll be a total of a 3 for their armor value. Their attacks would be a +1 for their level, and then depending on the weapon type that they're using, they could use any weapon. Two-handed weapons give them a +1, and then all other standard-sized weapons give them, no plus or minus, and then small light weapons would give them -1. So for my particular warrior that I'm going to start off with, he will be armed with heavy armor, a shield, a sword, and so he will have a +1 to attack because of his level, and a +3 overall due to his armor and his shield. So when I do turn to that, when I do turn to the character sheet, you'll see that scribbled in there. Otherwise, so life is hit points, and as you can see, the hit points for a warrior is 6 plus their levels. So this beginning character will have a 7 hit points. Clerics, so clerics add half of their level, rounded down, to his attack roll, and then but they do add their full level when attacking undead creatures. So a first level cleric, for most attacks will be at +0, but against undead they will have a +1. They're allowed light armor or heavy armor plus a shield. So once again, if I arm my cleric with a standard weapon, a heavy armor, and a shield, they will likewise have a 3 as far as their defensive value. Weapons can be hand weapons, two-handed weapons, or slings. Spells. So a cleric may cast the blessing spell up to 3 times per day, adventure. A cleric may use a healing power 3 times per game. All right, so this allows obviously allows the cleric to use, as many as 6 spells during their first adventure or during their first their first running through. When it says per adventure, most gaming sessions are going to be fairly short and contained within a lesson. I mean, within an adventure. So, basically 6 spells. Their life is, or hit points is going to be 4 plus their level, or 5 for a first level cleric. So much like the warriors and barbarians and dwarves and such get a +1 per level for their attacks. Rogues, on the other hand, get that same +1 per level for their defensive rolls. And so a rogue is going to start off with an armor class or armor value of, if they're wearing light armor, which they most likely would, they would get a +1 for that. And then for their level, they would get a +1 for that. So their base would be a 2 for their armor value. They only get a +1 attack when their group outnumbers a group of minions or vermins, and that is the advantage that they would get in a crowded combat situation. As long as their side outnumbers the other, that's where they'll get the +1 to attack as well. They could use light weapons, which is a -1 to attack. So in that crowded kind of situation, if their number outnumbers the minions or vermin, then it would even out, and they would just have a 0 modifier to their attack roll. Their life is a 3 plus level, so a 4 at first level. And finally, wizards. All right, so Wizards adds his level only when attacking with spells, including spell casts from scrolls or on solving puzzles or riddles. So a wizard will get a +1 when casting a +1 when casting a spell. And wizards start off with they can carry a light weapon or a sling. They do not wear armor, so they're very fairly squishy, in the sense that they don't have very much protection as far as their armor adjustment is concerned. Their life is also the lowest of all of the classes, so a first level wizard would have a 3 hit points. So it's going to be fairly important to keep the wizard, well protected from harm's reach. And they will start off with 2 spells +1 per level. So a starting wizard begins with 3 spells. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time with barbarians or elves, dwarves, or halflings. All right, so much like old school, D&D, the earliest versions of D&D, some of the demi-human races are actually classes, and they, and that is in line with the oldest version of Dungeons and Dragons. Characters can purchase equipment in the beginning, so they did have that starting amount that they could purchase, and it goes through and gives you some descriptions of some of the things that they're purchasing. I'm not going to get that much into detail with this particular demonstration of the gameplay. How to attack monsters. So, unlike other games where they have initiative, the player, DM can choose, like, all right, I'm going to have my characters attack first. And so there is no initiative roll that needs to be made. They just go and they fire off their attacks first. We'll see how many of the monsters are affected, during that combat, and then the monster's turn will go. Or the player group can go second. All right, and then the monsters would go first, but the monsters would have to make a morale check to see how they're actually responding to the situation of encountering the player group, and then you go from there. But the monsters would get to act first if that's truly what they're looking to do. So, I haven't run through this using both options very much. So, I really can't tell you which is the best mode to do it. But you're playing a solo adventure, so whatever the outcome is what the outcome is. There's no real pressure to, worry about, recreating a character or even an entire group of characters. It's one of the fastest processes I've seen in a game. So minions, and so when fighting minions or vermin, uh, damage that exceeds what is necessary to kill a creature will then go to a second creature. So let's say a fighter is fighting two goblins, and goblins have a defensive value of 3, and the fighter rolls 7 damage, all right, which is with the modifier. And so that fighter is going to kill 2 goblins and still have 1 additional point of damage left over to harm a third. And so that's basically how the system works when you're fighting, minor creatures or minions and vermin, is that the damage spreads out and hits multiple targets. And that's meant to represent the an excess of character skill versus these, fairly minor creatures that they should be able to, kind of tear through fairly easily. Bosses, on the other hand, I mean, you're generally fighting a boss, the whole group onto one target, and so there's less need for excessive damage to extend out to other creatures, unless there's also minions in the same room, and the character would likely want to eliminate some of those minions as well. It goes on here: when the boss loses more than half of its life hit points, its level drops by 1. All right, so it becomes harder for it to hit and easier for it to be hit. But it also must make a morale roll to see if it actually hangs around or tries to flee. And they go through the fleeing mechanics and everything. So now we get to actually creating an adventure, creating a dungeon. Now, I'm going to switch views again, and so here's the character sheet. All right, and so the great thing about this play sheet is that it has all 4 characters on one sheet. And so I've already filled this out, and apologize for the sloppiness a little bit. I'm just throwing this thing together. I didn't bother writing all the abilities because I kind of know them, and they're right there in the book for me to always glance at. Again, one of the luxuries of solo adventuring is that you don't have to worry about the delay of digging into the rule book and checking it out. And as I said, I made some errors when I first filled this out here. So my warrior is Fulgrim. He's going to have a +1 to attack. He has a shield, heavy armor. And so that's going to give him a 3 defensive roll. He has 7 life. And then I go on and I have Healer, all right, which is my cleric. And I know, yes, I gave him stupid names. All right, so he's a plus 0 in most combat situations, but against undead, he'll have a plus 1. He has a shield, heavy armor, and a mace, which is a standard weapon. 5 hit points. And so he's going to have 3 blessings and 3 heals and a defensive roll of a 3, or a defensive value of a 3, I should say. So Castelot is my wizard. He's at a 0 with melee weapons and a, actually looking at this because he does not get a plus 1. So he's at a -1 with his light melee weapon, because light melee weapons don't do very much damage. And a +1 though with his spells. So he does get that level bonus for spells. And he has a defensive roll of 0. All right, so he's pretty squishy, like I said. Only 3 hit points. Which any of us that have ever played, first edition Dungeons and Dragons, we kind of know wizards are very, very squishy. And since this doesn't have any attributes, there's no boost to some of these things that you might be familiar with. So he's going to take 3 spells: Sleep, Fireball, and Protection. All right, most likely use that protection on himself. And then finally, Kleptoften, all right, is my rogue. He has a 4 life, as you can see. He's +0 under normal circumstances, and that is because he has a light. He would be -1 under normal circumstances and a +1 in those crowded situations where his group outnumbers a group of minion or vermin. He has 4 hit points. He has a +2 defensive roll, and that is due to his level and his light armor. All right, he uses a sling and a dagger. All right, and actually the sling might have been a +0. Daggers do minus. I'll have to double check that afterwards. So I'm going to shift this out of the way and get my graph paper ready. Now, one of the other things I'm going to show you is, is this graphic here. So this here is the dungeon creation, building table. And so as you can see, you would roll a D66, which is 2 different dice, my 10s and my 1s, right? So in this case, this would be a 36, all right? So I would roll this for the room, then roll 2d6 on the room contents table, and as you can see, just go all the way down to 12 and see what the room contents are, all right? But we begin by constructing the dungeon by first rolling an entryway. So that's what I'm going to roll first. Is I'm going to roll to see what kind of an entryway I end up with, and so I'm going to start with number 5. All right, so number 5, and now I'm going to try to duplicate that and draw that in, as our entryway. I may not be as fancy as what they're doing here. But we shall see. That looks like about. Okay. And so you can see, so that's basically my entryway, and you can see that's a recreation of number 5. So this is strictly a corridor. So now I'm going to go to this chart here, and I know I'm dealing with a corridor. So it says if a corridor So now I'm going to roll 2d12. 2d6, I'm sorry. So I rolled a 6. So I'm going to come down to 6. And you can see here that I'm rolling a d6 on the vermin table. If I win, I roll a d6 on the treasure table. So we're going to see what kind of vermin that we encounter here. And this is where I'm going to use my, well, let's actually put this here. So this is where I'm going to use the charts in the book. And so the first thing in the corridor that I'm using is the vermin table. And let's see if this is the same. All right. So I'm going to show you the vermin table very quickly. There. So now I'm going to roll a d6 on this table. And I rolled a 6. So a 6 is going to be 2d6 skeletal rats. They are level 3. They have no treasure. Crushing attacks are at a +1 against skeletons, but they cannot be attacked by bows or slings. Clerics add a +1 attacking them because they are undead. So in this particular combat, my cleric is actually going to end up with, because he is armed with a mace, he is going to get a +1 for the mace and the other +1 for his them being undead. So he's going to get a +2 to the attacks. So now I have to determine how many of these level 3 rats there are. And so it's 2d6, and I rolled 8. So there were going to be 8 of them. Now, this is a corridor that they're in, and so nothing can attack more than 2 in a slot in a corridor. I'm just trying to figure out which... Nope, wrong. There we go. So there can only be 2. So as my characters are in here, and they can only be 2 abreast, these rats can only be at the most 2 in each in each stage. So I'm going to just stagger them out like that. So my players are coming in on there, or my characters, I should say. I'm the player and so now I'm going to make my attack rolls. So first up is my, I'm going to elect to go first. And so my fighter is going to attack. And so he's going to get a +1 to his attack roll. And so he rolled a 4. So that means 5 points. So this first rat is dead. It only has a 3. And so now and these are vermin. So under the vermin, I'm going to write 6x skeletal rats. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just writing them out here, as you can see. So the first one is killed. He rolled a 4. 1 is down to 2 now. So that's his attack. The second in line is my cleric. Now my cleric actually gets a +2. So he did 6 points of damage. So my cleric is actually going to be able to kill this first one, kill the second one, and bring the third down to a 2nd point. So he kills this one. He kills this one. So he's making a straight line over here. And he's going to advance forward, and he wounds this one. So that is this one. He left this one in front of the fighter alone. This will allow one of the other characters to shift in, and now take up this spot here. So the fighter is still here. The cleric advanced forward, and now the thief is going to move into this spot here. The thief is going to attack, or rogue. Wow. So that was a great roll. So he just rolled a 6, but that's only going to be a 5 because he is using a dagger. It's a light dagger. However, because the group outnumbers, at this point, the group outnumbers that, I could argue that he'd get the full 6. All right. But I'm going to leave it at 5 because I can already see that this is, going against these rats pretty quickly. So he is going to kill these 2. So he kills 2 of these vermin. There's only one left, the wounded one in front of the fighter. Because of the corridor, I'm not going to let the wizard, jump in on this. So I'm actually going to let the rat is going to attack. Now the rat has a 3, and that's its attack. And the fighter has a 3 armor. And so the rat is going to attack the fighter, and it's not going to be able to penetrate his armor. So the rat is virtually useless against such a heavily, shielded and armored fighter. The next combat phase is the fighter attacks. He rolls a 3 plus his 1. He will do a total of 4 points of damage. And now that final rat, who only had 2 hit points at that point, is now dead. All right, so when we go back to this chart under the vermin chart, we won. So if you roll on the vermin table. If you win, you roll a d6 on the treasure table. However, because these were skeletal rats, they have no treasure. All right, so, but at least they've all been eliminated. So now we're back to our map. So now we are back to our, wrong screen. There we go. Now we're back to our map. So now we come to a 3-way intersection. All right, and my characters are going to decide that we are going to just move forward. So I'd say a D66 roll. All right, so I rolled a 35. So when I go to my other chart here, and I find what a 35 looks like, you can see what a 35 looks like. So we're going to have to basically bring that over and orient it this way. So it's going to go up 1 more and over 1. And 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Actually, it's smaller than that. All right. So that's a closed off room. So we're at a room now, so I'm going to go to my chart here. And as you can see, it says if a room. So I'm going to roll 2d6. So that's a 7. So now I'm going to go down to 7. And you can see I'm rolling on the minions table. And we possibly get damage here. So possibly get a, so this is my screen capture. So I'm going to go here. So now we're on the minions table. And there we go. So I'm going to roll 1d6 on the minions table. And I rolled a 4. So now it's d6 plus 1 orcs. So under minions, I'm going to see how many d6 plus 1 orcs I rolled. There's 3 orcs. 3x orcs. And they are 4, 4, and 4. Okay, they are going to have some kind of treasure. Orcs are afraid of magic and must test morale each time one or more is killed by a spell. If a spell cause their number to drop below 50%, they will test morale at a -1. They never have magic items in their treasure. Treat any rolled magic as a d6 times d6 gold pieces instead. Elves attack and cast spells against orcs at a +1. Their reactions on a d6 is to 1 to 2 bribe, 10 gold pieces each, 3 to 5 fight, or 6 fight to the death. So we have 3 orcs, and they're in a fairly small contained room. My fighter is going to enter into this room. So we'll switch back. And here we go. So there we have our 3 orcs. Our characters are entering in from a corridor, so they're still side by side. So it's going to be the fighter and the cleric as they enter in. And the fighter is going to immediately rush up and engage this one here. The cleric is going to peel over to the side here and engage this one. So that's how they're going to move. And then if there's any extra that the fighter has, he will then lash out over here. That will allow the magic user in this case come forward, and we'll see, how he comes into play. So fighter's going to make his attack roll. So he needs to score at least a 4 in order to hit. All right, he rolled a 6 plus 1, so he's done 7 points of damage. So he not only he killed this orc, he hit this orc fairly hard, bringing it down to just 1 hit point. The cleric is going to attack this orc here, and the cleric is not getting any bonuses this time, so he's just a straight roll. And so he rolled a 2. All right, a 2 is not enough to actually harm that orc. And so it is unharmed. The magic user steps in, and the magic user is going to cast a sleep spell. So I know the last time I looked for spells, it took me a long time in the book because it's only 6 spells in the entire game, and so it's very easy to just bypass the actual spell section. I should mark it off. All right, I think it's page 48. There it is, sleep. This spell works like an attack roll. It does not affect undead, dragons, or certain other monsters. The wizard adds his level to the roll. Sleep will defeat one boss or d6 plus level minions if it hits. So he's going to get a +1, and he might put down both of these two orcs if he hits. Ah, perfect. All right, so he definitely hit. So he cast a sleep spell, and it is going to affect D6 plus level minions. There's only 2 minions left, so he's automatically going to put down both of them. He would have put to sleep 5 of them. So these 2 orcs are now asleep. All right, and so the players will finish them off, and basically execute the orcs. And now we go to the treasure and see the treasure. The treasure is standard. So now we're going to go to a treasure. Oh, that's back here. So regular treasure. Remember, they were saying if the magic treasure comes up, you just roll 2d6 of gold per. Is there more than one treasure table? No. It's a regular treasure table here. I rolled a 4. So 1 gem worth 2d6 times 5 gold pieces. So 2d6 times 5. I rolled a 9. So essentially 45 gold pieces worth of treasure. All right, so 45 gold pieces worth of gem. All right. So this room here, when we go back and we go back to our desktop. So this room here was a dead end. So now the players are going to come back and they're going to go to the right. So once again, I'm rolling and I roll a 31. So when I go to my map and I find 31, so 31 you can see here is a doorway that leads into a room. So we're going to go here. Might be kind of hard to cram that in. So I'm going to try to make it work. Actually, if this goes this way, it's going to butt right up with this. It's going to go 3 up. There's going to be a door here. Okay. I had to modify it a little bit just to make it work, and there's a door here. So we have doors. So when there is a door, I'm going to go and check what we have on these doors. Let's see. There was some place to check if a door had had any kind of traps or locks. Door locks. Optional rule. Lock doors in random dungeons. You may roll a die for every door that appears in a room. On a 1 to 2, the door is locked. Roll d6 and the level of the lock. All right, so let's see if they're just locked doors. I'm going to check this one here. So it's a 4, so the door is not locked. Bashing the door open, bashing the door open, locking the door. Okay, so the door is unlocked. I have to check the room contents. So I'm going to see and roll 2d6 on room content, and I rolled an 11. Roll d6 on the boss table. And a 6 on the d6 is a final boss. So I'm going to roll this. I rolled a 5, so it's a 5 on the boss table. So let's see what we're looking at here. The boss table is a Chaos Lord. So it should be interesting. So a Chaos Lord. All right, it is level 6. So if we win, we roll a d6 for leveling up, plus a d6 for treasure tables. So a Chaos Lord is a level 6, 4 life, 3 attacks, 2 treasure rolls at +1. Before the fight begins, roll a d6 to determine if the Chaos Lord has any special powers. Let's hopefully he doesn't, but we'll see. On all, must roll a 4 plus or be at -1 on all defensive rolls until the Chaos Lord is slain, if he has Evil Eye. If he rolls a 5, he has energy drain. Any character taking a wound from the Chaos Lord must roll a 4 plus or lose 1 level. 6 is Hellfire Blast. All right. Clerics add plus half their level to rolls. When you kill a Chaos Lord, roll a die. On a 5 or 6, the character of your choice finds a clue, which is page 58. Reactions. It's 1 will flee if outnumbered. Well, he's obviously going to start off outnumbered. 2 is flight, and 3 to 5 is death. So my characters are going to see this Chaos Lord sitting in this room and be like, holy crap. So let's see if the Chaos Lord first has any special powers. And he rolled a 5. So he is going to have energy drain. Any character taking a wound from this Chaos Lord must roll a 4 plus or lose 1 level. Well, they're first level, so they can't lose a level. I don't think they're going to much survive this anyway. He does get 3 attacks. So they're going to attack him. He has 4 life. they may not have that. Oh no, he's level 6 though. So he's level 6. That means that they're going to need to roll 6s or higher just to hit him, and then do additional. This might not be too out of the realm of possibility here. So let's get to our desktop. So they're fighting this Chaos Lord. So first thing is my fighter. My fighter will attack. He has a +1. He needs a 6 to hit the Chaos Lord. And he rolled 5, so he missed. The cleric attacks. He gets a +1 because of the type of creature. However, let me see what blessing does, because he's going to have to 48. I think we're going to have to pull out all the stops here. So blessing. This spell removes a curse from a character. A curse is into a cursed room. Blessing will also remove other conditions such as being turned to stone or Medusa. Also, that's not going to help. And he has cures. So he might as well attack. He rolled a 1, so he missed. The magic user is going to cast he could try to cast a fireball, and let's see what that will do. Now, fireballs are not like fireballs and other things, so the spell works like an attack roll. The wizard adds to his level to the roll. Fireball does not affect dragons. Used against minions, Fireball slays a number of creatures equal to the wizard's die roll minus the level of the minions. A minimum of 1 creature is slain always. A level 1 wizard casts a fireball at a group of goblins, 3 minions. All right, the roll is a 5 plus 1 is a 6 in total. So 6 minus 3 equals 3 are killed. All right. He doesn't have... All right, he's going to try a fireball. It's not like fireballs in other games. It's not like it's going to envelop the entire room. So he's going to get a +1. So he needs a 6 to hit. And a 7 to do 1 point of damage. God, that's going to be very, very difficult. Sleep will defeat 1 boss or a d6. No, he's going to try sleep. He rolled a 5. So that's his... Oh, he already used his sleep spell. All right, so that was his fireball. He missed. The thief is going to use his attack. So he's at a total of a +0. He needs a 6 just to hit. And he missed. So he rolled a 4. So now the demon is going to attack. And it is... Let's see who it's going to attack. He's going to get 3 attacks. And he's going to deal 6 points of damage with each attack. So I just have to see who he's attacking first. So there are 4 players. Well, the fighter jumped right up into him and attacked. So his first attack on the fighter is going to do, because he's a level 6, so he's going to do 6 points. He has a defensive roll of 3, so that would be 3 points. So he's down to 4. His other his next attack would be most likely on the same, but let's see. So he did 3 points here. He would do 3 points here and kill. And then his next attack is here. He was doing 6 points of damage. -2, so 6 minus 2 is 4. Killed the thief. So now the thief and the caster is dead. The cleric is, or at least at 0. At 0, the fighter is up 4. And the cleric is unharmed. So the cleric is going to try to heal somebody. Fallen Heroes 44. When a character loses his last life, he slumps to the ground, mortally wounded. If a combat is still going on, a partner may still access any scroll, potion, vial, or holy water, weapon, shield, or magic item on a dead adventurer's body. To be able to, comrade must forfeit his attack for the turn. All right. So they're not quite dead. All right. The party may carry a dead comrade. So let's see. Healing. Let's look at the cleric really fast. So a cleric. This power allows the cleric to heal a number of life points equal to d6 plus his level. The cleric may use healing at any moment during the fight, but may not attack on the same turn in which he heals someone. A cleric may use healing on himself or on a friend. All right, so he is going to heal the magic user, because he has a greater chance of healing up the magic user. So he is going to heal 2 points. So the magic user is back up again. He can cast that at any time. So that was the start of their round. So the fighter is going to make another attempt. he missed. The now revived wizard is going to cast a protection spell on himself. That will give him a +1. The thief is dead. He has gone. And the Demon Lord is going to attack again. So he will, there's 3 up. He has 3 attacks. He's going to dish out 1 attack per. So he will attack the fighter first, doing 3, brings the fighter down to 1 hit point. He will then attack the cleric. The cleric has a defense of 3. He will bring him down to, that means 3 left. He brings him down to 2 points. And he attacks the cleric a second time, which is actually only 3/2, so he just killed the cleric. So now the cleric is at -1. The fighter attacks. He rolled a 5. He missed. The wizard is going to try to run away. And the demon attacks. And yeah, they didn't stand a chance. So, a total character wipeout in the very first scenario. So as you can see, when you're doing randomized, adventures, you never know what's quite going to come up. There isn't any leveling of the encounters that are randomly generated, and so your characters can, like we just saw here, have a fairly easy way in, and then all of a sudden, bang, they get smashed out of existence. So it's really pretty cool. I would, obviously I would look at the different, potentials, and there should be some level scaling involved. Unless I missed it somewhere that there isn't. But there should be some, but that's a fairly easy thing to do for yourself. Or what you can do is say, well, this is going to be a level 1 to 4, or starting out adventure is supposed to be 1 to 3, and so you might be able to disregard any boss that is much higher than 1 level above, and that's certainly something that I would consider doing if you're running this as well. Like I said, it's solo, so it really doesn't matter how it ends up, but if you haven't thought about picking it up, I certainly recommend it, because it is a much more condensed version of some of the other systems that I've seen. Like I've used and tried to use the Mythic GM emulator, and that's a little bit more complex. And then you have to use a regular RPG for it. So, whether it be basic fantasy or some other white box and then use that. There's also the card deck that I showed, Axburn's, deck of many dungeons that has a system kind of similar to this, and the monsters are scaled though, and then you have this, which is much more complex. So, the one flaw that I might see in this is that it doesn't preset the scaling to the character level. But like I said, that's a very simple thing for you to do when you're playing on your own, is to say, it's a characters of levels 1 or 2, and so no boss will be higher than 4 or 5 in that case, because 6 is really quite devastating, and they really don't have a shot at beating that. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please consider to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Hit the notifications. Please leave your comments. Comments are most welcome. Comments help me out a lot in that it allows me to respond to your questions. It allows me to look into games that you might suggest. It also allows me to see that you're someone with similar interests, and I have always reciprocated people coming to my channel and leaving comments. I always follow them and follow their YouTube channel, and will start to respond to their videos as well, especially if there are things that are along the same lines of what I'm doing here. And share if you enjoyed it. The most word that I can get out there about the channel will bring more and more people in, and the more people that come in, the more comments that I'll receive, and so I'll be able to respond to the things you're looking for in gaming videos in the future. So you all have a good remainder of the weekend. I know it's already a Sunday for me, Sunday night, and I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime in the near future. Have a good evening.